Good evening, everyone. I will call to order the Board of Finance for September 18th, 2023. And first item on the agenda is, of course, a motion to adopt or amend the agenda. I would welcome such a motion. So, second. Great, thank you, Councilor Barlow and President Paul. Any discussion of the agenda? I guess I'll just say, I was thinking about this a little bit, and we have, it's a little bit unusual agenda the way we have it set up. So we're gonna have a consent agenda, then we have 2 presentations, and then we do have 5 items that we should take action on tonight. Looking at them, I don't expect them to take an extraordinarily long time. But I think I would, the way I'm planning, if we don't change the order of the agenda, I'm thinking I'll try to wrap up the 2 presentations no later than 6:10, so that we have 20 minutes to deal with those 5 items. I'm sorry, it should be more than that because we then have an executive session, which is going to take. And
sorry.
Right. So,
Mayor,
yeah.
if I may, we had the fiscal health report on the agenda for a presentation here before I realized that we were going to be on the deliberative at City Council. So if it was okay with the Board of Finance, I would literally be giving the same presentation twice, which no one wants to sit through. So maybe we could amend the agenda so that we don't do that.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting suggestion. So maybe we would remove it from here since we are going to have the full council discussion. For it's a possibility, and then just to amend what I said earlier, I think we should get to it, but I think really I will try to have us done with the presentation by 6, so then we would have a half hour for the executive session and the fairly routine items that need to be amended. Does that make sense, or do people think there'd be benefit to have discuss the fiscal health report here as well as the deliberative later?
I think once is enough.
Okay, good. So okay, then I see nods all around. So I think we have an amendment. Basically, let's vote on an amended agenda if it's okay with the motion maker and the seconder that removes item 5. That removes item 5 and otherwise keeps the unchanged. All those in favor of such a motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously, and we have an agenda. That brings us now to the public forum. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the Board of Finance? I don't believe there's anyone in the room that meets that description. I do see we have a number of attendees online. If you would like to be recognized. Sorry, actually, if you can you check, Catherine, are any of the attendees raising their hands, wishing to be recognized?
No one is raising their hands.
Okay, great. Then if no one raises their hands in the next couple of seconds here, I am going to close the public forum. So the public forum is now closed, and we will move to the consent agenda. And I would welcome a motion to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions indicated.
So moved.
Thank you, President Paul, seconded by Councilor Barlow. Discussion regarding the consent agenda. Seeing none, we will go to a vote on the consent agenda. All those in favor of the motion?
I actually do have to say something. I'm sorry.
No
I just
worries.
need to recuse myself from item 3.4.
Okay, very good. So,
I mean, I'm happy to vote on it and just note the recusal 3.4.
very good. Thank you. Noted. We'll note that in the minutes, and assume we somehow we have someone taking the minutes. But just note
Yes.
that. Thank you. And we'll go to a vote on that motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Okay, that brings us now to item number 4, which is the FY25 budget presentation. I'll hand this over in a moment to Chief Administrative Officer Catherine Shad to lead the discussions. I will interject, I'm sure, at times, but Catherine is going to lead this discussion. Welcome, Councilor McGee. We've just finished the public forum and the consent agenda, and we are getting to the FY25 budget presentation. And just for your awareness, we're not going to do the fiscal health report item 5 here and at the deliberative council. We're just going to do it at the council. So we have about 50 minutes for this budget presentation. This I think is an important start to our discussion about the FY25 budget and budgets thereafter. As the board is very aware, FY24 was a challenging budget year, and it was one that from my perspective, made it very clear that the FY25 budget would be even more difficult and really create some terrible choices for us if we did not really start the budget planning early and consider a whole range of budgetary interventions to kind of reset the budget. I think we're still very much dealing with the challenges resulting from, Catherine will go into some detail about, the pandemic was a seismic event in numerous ways and had all sorts of budget implications that we have been grappling with for years. And we are emerging from that period with strong in many ways. And I think the fiscal health report that we'll talk about, the full council, is an indication of that. And at the same time, I do think need to, there's been over a number of years now, there's been some significant, really structural changes to the budget that we have not, that we need to respond to. And this budget presentation lays out a number of different ways in which we are considering responding. We are excited isn't the right term exactly, but we welcome the chance to start the conversation now in September with the Board of Finance about this work and how where we're headed, and get your feedback on it, and get your thoughts on the way forward. I think this is going to be the first of a number of budget discussions quite early in the year. And let's get to it. With that, Catherine, why don't you take it from here?
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. I am going to share the screen and just go through this presentation. It's going to have plenty of time for question and discussion at the end, because that's really the point of this. As the mayor indicated, one of our priorities, having listened to your feedback last year, was ensuring that we have a proactive discussion about the FY25 budget kind of as soon as we finish the FY24 budget. So if it felt like you didn't get much of a break, that's because you didn't. And apologies for not being there in person. COVID finally got me. A little bit of context for us, because we did have a little bit of a summer break. So you may have forgotten the details of the FY24 budget. Here they are. The total budget was $101 million. And all through tonight, we're going to be talking just about the general fund. We relied on about $4.5 million of one-time funds. So that was less than 5%, which is good, but still, if we didn't have that ARPA or rainy day funds, we would have to increase property taxes by 8.2 cents, which is not something that anyone wants to do. In addition to last year's budget being $101 million, next year's or FY25's budget will grow because of the cost of living. We've mentioned several times over these past few years the cost of living adjustments that we negotiated with our unions was larger than we had seen in the past because of the inflationary environment. But for FY25, you can see we're applying overall a 3% COLA. That's because we do have a 3% COLA locked in with both AFSCME and the police officers union. It is a 3.75% COLA for the Firefighters Association. That is a smaller subset of our employees. It's an additional 1 to 2 million for fleet. So that gives us overall 106 million. These are obviously really rough numbers. My staff is continuing to refine them behind the scenes. Then we look at projected revenues. According to our records over the last several years, our revenues also increased by about 3%. So taking all of that into account, that leaves us with a $7 million hole, potentially for next year. So that's why we are starting this conversation early. At the time of the budget passage in the mayor's memo, we talked about these 5 items here as kind of potential solutions that might help us to increase revenue or to cut expenses to cut that hole. Additionally, in this presentation, we're going to talk about some new items like updating our pilot program, reviewing direct fees for service, and considering transportation utility fees. We are not in this presentation going to talk about a public safety tax rate increase. Although that is something that we've talked about in other venues. So jumping right in, the first item here is a recommendation to hire a consulting firm that would work with some of our largest general fund departments and would help improve the efficiency of our operations and really increase the value of what the community gets for their money. We would analyze these departments that I have up here, and that's City Arts, the Parks Department, Business and Workforce Development, CEDO, the Clerk Treasurer's Office, the Department of Public Works, and permitting and inspections. We are not recommending including the police or fire departments because those either have already been done or are in the midst of being done. We have discussed this with department heads. That actually was led by Moreau while I was out on vacation. So I am currently incorporating their feedback into a draft RFP. You can see a suggested timeline here, which is really built around being able to incorporate any suggested changes into an FY25 budget. The second item is a revenue and equity analysis, and this is something that I've been working on with Planning Director Tuttle, who is joining us via Zoom. Thank you. And this is also known as the Urban 3 analysis.
Catherine?
And yeah.
I'm just thinking maybe to give you a little bit of break so you're not just talking continuously, and maybe best way to get engagement and feedback from Board of Finance owners. Maybe why don't we pause at least at the end of each of these sections? Any questions or thoughts on the operational analysis? Councilor Barlow.
Oh yeah, I'm as you and I have talked, and I'm very supportive of the operational analysis. But you know, it's one of several tools we're discussing tonight. But I guess what is our in terms of closing the hole? Do you have any like sense would we close, you know, quarter of it, 10% of it, or it would depend on the outcome, but we sort of kind of know what some of these possibilities are, I guess. Maybe this is a question for the end. I wanted to express my support for this part of the analysis, I guess. And I guess one question I had is there a number on like an average cost per FTE in the city? Like I know they're not all equal.
Yes, there is, and I would be happy to get that to you, because that analysis varies widely, and I think it would be most useful to get that to you if you agree. Salary with benefits, but not including our public safety departments, so that it would be similar to the analysis that we're going to be presenting or completing.
Yeah, that would be, I guess, useful. I just think in terms of trying to get a scale about what's even possible.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councilor Barlow. I think this is going to be a significant investment of time and effort and resources, and so I think the only reason to, I think we have to go into it with the hope and the plan for there to be significant savings here. From my perspective, we've gone through a period of some significant expansion in different areas, significant city taking on new responsibilities. We've gone through a time of a real change in the budget in a short period of time, and I'm hopeful that we will find meaningful efficiencies and savings, and perhaps even some clarity about there being areas where we are investing a lot of money or effort for historic reasons that may not apply to to the current situation. So I think it's premature to, I think we put a number out there at this point, and I think I think we don't have a lot to base that on. I think we're doing it because we're hopeful that it can have a meaningful contribution to the solution here. And I think as we get a little farther in, we can start to lay out some kind of range of goals. I will say, I think it's really important that this not be thought of as certainly my plan is not to approach it as an exercise where we anticipate large scale layoffs, large scale reductions in services. I think it's we have, in my decade, we have one sort of good comparable to this type of study, which was one done by the Burlington Electric Department probably about 8 years ago at this point. And in that effort, we did emerge from that with long-term 7-figure savings that we were able to realize, and that really strengthened the Burlington Electric Department, and that there were a number of jobs that were found to be no longer necessary. There were some new jobs that were created. There were some real savings. And the savings were achieved in partnership and really working with employees. And in that case, I'm not saying this is exactly what a strategy that's going to come out here, but I offered as an example, we really worked with the city, the BED team, and there were some early retirements that came about as a result of that effort. And I just offer that as an example. If we do find opportunities for changes, as we hope and expect we will through this study, we'll certainly work with the public employee unions and individual employees to ensure that we do this working with our employees to the greatest degree possible.
And just so you're clear on my comments and my support for this, we went through a similar exercise when I was on the school board, and we had Act 46, which constrained the amount of spending the school district could have that year. We spent time doing this. We ended up, I think, having a very good outcome in that we right-sized according to the need, the various functions and services that the district had. So that's my goal, as well as to cut jobs, but is to sort of do the analysis and see what's possible.
Great. Principal.
Thank you. So it seems as though when we passed the budget that this study was slated to cost $75,000. Is that right?
I think we do have, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, we do not know how much this study was going to cost. That's just how much we had allotted for all of this potential work, President Paul. So for instance, the legal work that's already happened under transportation utilities fees has come out of that 75,000. It's very small. It's like 2,500, but just as an example.
No, I guess the reason I'm asking is just simply that it sounds like a lot of work. $75,000 is a lot of money to most people, but when you do a study, it just seems as though that. Well,
no, I appreciate
this.
Yeah, no, when Catherine and I talked about the lead up to this, and I think it's quite possible, depending on the responses that we get to this, that we are coming back and it's certainly possible we're coming back proposing greater investment than is in the budget right now. We will encourage in the RFP there to be kind of creative responses. It may be possible. So I think here too, it feels, I think, premature. We don't know exactly what it's going to cost, and we don't know exactly the way that the payments will be structured. I do think you're right to think that if we're really going to do a thorough, significant study here, it's likely to cost more than what is budgeted so far.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that I would encourage is if there is a way when the RFP is done, that one of the goals also will be for them to give you know, obviously in collaboration with staff, because they can't make up the numbers without your help. What the, you know, when the report comes back, what are the savings? So that we can have a pretty good idea, you know, better than ballpark, but not exact. You know, so I'm hopeful that the RFP will include that, but, you know, I'm very supportive as well. Thank you.
Great. Okay, Counselor Jang, we have the window for the cameras reduced right now, so that the way things are set up. So if you don't need to expand it. So well, we have it now momentarily expanded, but I'd say in general, Counselor Jang, if you want to interject during this presentation,
Yes,
feel
he
free
has
to-
he has his hand raised.
Oh, you do, and now I can see that. Go ahead.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And first of all, thank you, Catherine. You're not feeling well, but you're still here. It's demonstrate commitment. Really appreciate that. You could have been bad and hydrating, but thank you for doing this. And please do not take this as in any negative ways, right? And from my perspective, maybe this is a little bit premature to have this conversation now without having any quarterly update from all the departments we're talking about, right? We did talk about actually having a quarterly update because it's never happened in the history of the city. I think having this conversation, we could have at least wait a little bit that we receive updates from them in order to see where are the projections, right? And also, you know, the budget of 2024 has changed at least 3 times. We talked about initially $2.5 million whole, and then it been increasing. So we didn't know really well. And I would just argue that we maybe take a little bit of time to conceptually have, if we are going to study, what exactly are we going to study, right? I think it's very important. It's also very important to not think about the Burlington Police Department without COVID, before 2020, and the Burlington Police Department now. And it seems the proposition here is not part of it. But that department has substantially changed in a very good way. It's no longer about police officers anymore, but now we're talking about the cahoots. I don't know the new name. We're talking about CNA, we're talking about CSL, we're talking about a lot, and all of those need to be studied as well. Also, we also had some positions that were created just to increase the amount of new police officers. I think they're doing a good job with these changes we have. We start to see right now the people are being hired to come. And you know, based on this also, I didn't see anything about an idea of consolidation of some departments and what it will take. One, for example, we know the water division is at DPW. What will it take to move it to the enterprise, such as the Burlington Electric Department, for example, to study that as well for cost-saving mechanisms? Yes, and I think for now those are my thoughts. But I would have loved for us to receive quarterly updates from the respective department first before us having this conversation. But thank you for your commitment in keeping this on the back of your minds. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Jang. All right, I think, thank you everyone for the comments. We're gonna keep going with the presentation, and Councilor Jang, we're gonna shrink you again so that everyone can see the screen, but so just, if you wanna get in again, just go ahead and speak out loud and I'll recognize you, okay? All right.
All right, I'm going to move very quickly over a couple of these because they are, I'm not expecting them to have a large impact on increasing our revenue. And as you can see from these slides, we are planning further updates to this board as well as City Council This revenue and equity analysis you may have heard also referred to as the Urban 3 analysis. And Megan Tuttle and I are working on this together. We will come back and let you know and have a presentation. But again, although we are considering some possible policy recommendations to ensure better equity, I don't think this will be any kind of needle mover for revenue. The next study is the impact fee study. And this has been led also by Director Tuttle. As you can see at the end of this slide, this study is wrapping up. And it is my understanding that this group will be coming to the Board of Finance and recommending new fees to be effective in FY25. But again, unfortunately, through the work of the consultant, we've realized that won't be a source of increasing revenues, but rather shifting revenues. On fleet.
Sorry, hold on 1 second, Catherine. Go ahead, Councilor Carpenter.
This is back on the property tax study and the work
Yes.
being done, and I brought this up before, and I really think it's very important for us to understand the impact of the homestead credit. You know, we keep saying 65–70% of our citizens are eligible. What does that mean? And it means, I think, getting more information from the state, really diving into that, because they go hand in hand, and we cannot avoid the fact that almost 70% of our tax rate is school related. So I just think understanding that will be very important. Who gets it? How much do they get? You know, how much are their taxes reduced by the homestead credit? And I don't know that it's easy info to get, because it requires working really closely with the state, and the individual reductions are confidential. But I just think we need to understand that, because there still continues to be a lot of conversation around my taxes are this much, but in fact, some people are not paying that much; they're paying less. I also think in that same conversation, which I'm sure you'll be getting to, is, you know, where does the school tax increase fit into that? That's early, but we know more of the high school will be coming online next year.
Great, thank you. Any other comments on this or the impact fee study or questions?
Not seeing more hands in the room here, Catherine, so.
All right. The fleet, we are, as everyone knows, the fleet committee has estimated we need $2 to $3 million annually to sustainably replace the general fund fleet. And so with the mayor's leadership, that committee is meeting later this week and in the coming weeks with a couple of different consultants who will help us with funding and a new electrification study. Earlier in this slide, you can see some of the progress that had been made earlier to date, but there's a lot more work to do. And then there is also a separate financial sustainability study going on for CEDO as part of a really cool grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Director Pine is on with us via Zoom. As you can see, this work is really just getting started. They had the kickoff last week. And the deliverable is to present new funding models to the mayor and city council before next year's budgeting process, to ensure more sustainability with CEDO and less of a general fund draw. Questions on fleet or CEDO?
I'll just add quickly the couple things. I think we have a real challenge with the fleet to really get a solid plan that's well resourced. At the same time, this is an area where there's a lot of innovation going on, and where there's now new help from the federal government to achieve our electrification goals, and the technologies are really shifting. Couple examples of that. I went to a mayor's conference this summer that of the 4 panels, there are 4 panels for the whole conference. One of the 4 panels was on fleet electrification, and one of the consultants we're meeting with actually met at that conference, and I think there's an exciting area of just real change and energy right now. Also, another kind of interesting thing, there's a new medium, I'm not gonna get the term quite right, but it's like medium duty, I think is the term they used, electric truck seller that is building a new showroom and office over just out in Williston, and it just between that and the new electric bucket truck that we just brought online, it really, it's an indication that, as expected for some time, that the kind of commercial equipment area is really changing, and that whereas we've been in this disappointing position of having to come to you in the past few years and have a fairly limited number of vehicles that we're able to electrify, I think that's really going to change in the years ahead, and we're seeing signs of that. So doesn't, you know, we still have a serious financial need. The federal government's not going to pay for it all, but I think they are going to be a partner in this transition, and we are looking forward to coming back to you with some real thinking and a real plan for how we get this done.
All right, I'm moving us right along. So
oh, and then I did just want to say thank you to Brian Pine and the CEDO team for taking the initiative and applying for this HUD grant. This has been a goal for many years, really, and that we had particular talk about before the pandemic. At certain elements of CEDO, we had hopes for becoming more self-sustaining, and I think this study is going to move that conversation forward in a significant way. So thank you, Brian.
I agree. Thanks for saying that, Mayor. All right, I am now moving us along. These begin our additional options. These are items that the mayor and I have been discussing that we would like to bring you in on, items that were not mentioned in the FY24 budget memo, but that we think are important to consider. This first one has to do with pilots. That's payment in lieu of taxes, otherwise known as voluntary payments. There have been a lot of discussions about these payments throughout the FY24 budgeting process. So just a little bit of information here. The pilot represents almost $5 million of general fund revenue, so that's pretty significant. But 94% of it comes from these places, and that's the state of Vermont and BED and water. All of that is governed by charter, and it's designed so that the pilot paid is equal to what a private utility, or in the case of the state, what a private company would pay in taxes. Other entities that make payments, as you may have guessed, are UVM, the Medical Center, and Champlain College. And you can see according to this graph or this chart, both regular payments that they make on an annual basis, as well as additional infrastructure payments. And those were negotiated for a term of an annual 10 years based on our first 10-year capital plan. At the bottom, there are 5 organizations who also pay some sort of pilot or voluntary payment, but it's a very, very small amount. The recommendation here is that we as a city create a task force similar to one that was established in Boston in 2009. And in that instance, the task force put together a review to really ensure equity across the organizations that were paying pilot. And that would be the goal for us as well. It is unlikely that our largest contributors would increase their share of this revenue growth. But we would like to make sure that everyone who should be paying is paying, and we would obviously include those stakeholders in this pilot task force. And I'll pause there to see if there's any comments or questions.
On the task force, are you assuming that those would be citizens that would apply, community members that would apply to serve on that task force? Not that far ahead.
I have. It could be citizens. I think it would probably also be organizations that are 501c3s who are likely to be the targets of our asks for voluntary payments. They may want to be involved in terms of how it's structured. So representation from both probably makes sense.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor McGee.
Thank you. I'm curious if, as part of this, and I'm not super knowledgeable here, but in terms of the franchise fee, expanding that to Vermont Gas, that's something that's been considered.
Yes, I'm so glad that you asked. It was considered, and that was part of the legal opinion that I sought when I also looked at transportation utility fees, and that is not, expanding franchise fees is not something, at least upon initial legal review, that the city council can do alone.
Who else would have to approve that?
It is a lengthy legal memo, Councilor McGee. So let me go look at that so that I can make sure in my COVID-addled brain that I'm not giving you wrong information. But I have it and I would be pleased to share it with you. I apologize, I don't remember off the top of my head.
That's fine. Thank you, Catherine.
Quick question, Catherine.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think this is great. This is an amazing recommendation from my perspective, and it's not an innovation for Burlington. Boston done it, and I'm pretty sure we can do it too. But will it require maybe creating a position who will support you among your team to oversee all of this? And also, like, the timeline, isn't it too short now? Before we know it, 25 will be here. Or this is for 2026 or just a study itself?
It's a great question. I agree that we are unlikely to see a lot of revenue growth for FY 25. Unless we really get this moving quickly, Counselor Jang. And in terms of support, I am very thankful that right now we have someone in the clerk treasurer's office who helps manage these. She doesn't have a lot of extra capacity, but as you know, we don't have any more room in the budget. So I imagine that Tracy and I would just figure it out.
Yep, thank you. And I think the city councilors did receive an email from a concerned citizen about, the Burlington Country Club, and made a very solid case. I don't know if you saw it. Yeah, to be included as well, I think.
Yes, and this exactly. I did see that. Thank you. This would partially address that. So very interesting. Thanks for bringing that up.
Thanks.
All right, another suggestion, and there's just this one and one more, and then we're going to be done, everyone. Thanks for sticking with us. Is reviewing what I call our direct fee for services. And I include some examples on the left, and you'll see this affects everything from the Parks Department, city arts, permitting, all of them. I'm sorry, my brain is really starting to fade. But you can see this accounts for 13% of our revenue. So we're talking about a significant amount of funds. And what one thing to note is the city of Burlington does not currently have one standard policy or set of procedures for establishing those fees. It's really done on a case-by-case basis and done organically, which has worked to date. However, you can see here, with special thanks to Nancy Stetson, how this has happened, what's happened to these fees over time. And you may recall right before Chief Locke left, he increased ambulance fees. And to my knowledge, these are one of the only fees that have been adjusted in recent years. And so you can really see the effect of that in this chart. So the ask here is that we also hire a consultant who would help us figure out which fees we want to start focusing on and establish what the appropriate baseline of costs are, and then a policy for updating costs moving forward. Part of that would obviously be looking at comparative data, either in the private sector or of cities of comparable size. Questions before I move on to the last item?
Go ahead, Councilor Brown.
I just have one question. We see these precipitous drop-offs in fees. But that, I'm assuming that some of that's COVID and the actual use, but other is the inflationary effects of what we experience in inflation, like, you see these drop-offs from like 2019 through like 21. And some of them are coming back, some of them are staying on, I guess. But this is adjusted for inflation, so those, go ahead.
I'm very glad that Director Tuttle is here and raising her hand. So I'm going to allow her to answer this question. Thanks, Megan.
You're welcome, Catherine. And Councillor Barlow, I think the one line in particular that you're referring to is looking at building trade permits. And this is something that our office has looked into a little bit in helping put this chart together. One of the things to remember about building trade permits is that the cost of the permits themselves is driven on the estimated cost of construction. And so as we see booms in permitting for new developments, we will naturally see these fees go up. And then as we see fewer units that are getting their permits, we'll see these fees go down. So we did see a significant number of new permits, or I'm sorry, new housing units that came online in 2019. So that high point that you're seeing in 2017, we think is likely related to those permits that were happening at that time. I do know that DPI does put at least a CPI on their permit fees every year. That's something that council approves. But I think there's opportunities for us to look at how that fee structure is overall.
Thanks.
Yep, and maybe you can see me, but I just didn't see any private security fees, and why is not included?
We have only included the largest sources of revenues, Counselor Jang, not all revenues. But just frankly, because this graph started to get very confusing. So that's something we could get for you separately, but.
Yep, and by parking fees, it seems we have it twice. Parking fine or fees, I can't see very well, sorry.
One of them is fees and the other is fines,
Okay,
which
thank you.
are.
And that is frankly because they go to different funds. So we track them differently.
Okay, thank you. And maybe this is a question for the mayor or our city attorneys about these fossil fuel companies like these gas stations. And how do we make a correlation between their services and climate change, and also encouraging people, residents, to electrify their transportation options by increasing maybe their taxes? Like, what are the legalities of increasing the gas tax, for example, for the city, if any?
Thanks, Councilor Jang. That is, it's an interesting question. The city does not have the authority to assess a gas tax. There's state and federal taxes on that. It'd be something we would need legislative authority to do. We did get, of course, legislative authority to do the carbon pollution impact fee on new buildings. But to actually assess a fee at the gas pump, if that's what you're thinking, would require state action, and it would be, I think it would be unlikely. It would be very difficult to secure that approval. It's my sense of the gas tax and the way that's handled, but we could talk about that further another time if you're interested.
Thank you.
All right, last slide. Maybe. Yes, here we go. All right, and then the last item, we are recommending that we consider transportation utility fees. And this is an interesting suggestion that first came through Jason Gao, our Director of Operations. So I want to say a special thanks to him. And if you aren't familiar with this concept, TUFs, as they're known, are a permissible user fee, not a tax. And it helps to pay for sidewalks. They are assessed to all tax and rate payers. And the funds would be restricted to building, repairing, and maintaining sidewalks. We've completed an initial legal review, and those lawyers found that it is within our city authority, but this would be a non-property tax way to more sustainably fund our sidewalks. All right. That's it. We're at the question and discussion part. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. Any other final comments or questions?
Thank you, Catherine. President Paul.
Thank you. Actually, the only thing that I wanted to mention, Catherine, is I think I had sent this in an email to you that I do appreciate your coming to us now. And would ask that on the calendar for the Board of Finance meetings, that whatever the first meeting is in January, whatever the first meeting is at the beginning of each calendar quarter, each fiscal quarter, or calendar quarter, as the case may be, that we have this similar discussion, and we basically make that our policy going forward. So, you know, I don't think we need to do it more than once a quarter, until we get into the May. When we get into May, but I do think that it is very important that we have this conversation now, and I appreciate very much this PowerPoint and getting us started. So thank you. Just wanted to mention one other thing. I feel like I would be remiss is, well, this is to do with budget. I just wanted to verify, because we don't usually talk about the audit until we get the audit. But I did want to ask about the fact, even though it's not totally related, that the issues that were in the management letter are being addressed. As far as I'm concerned, they may not relate to the budget per se, but they do relate to our ability to do budgeting. And just wanted to make sure that those, particularly the closing journal entries, are now being done, as requested, actually as put it forward in the management letter last year.
I appreciate you following up on that, President Paul. Yes, in light of the fact that we don't have a director of financial operations, which is our next item, one of the things that we have done is to hire an outside consultant who is helping us with that. And so, yes, audit journal entry closings are going well, and audit preparation overall is going much smoother this year than last year. So I'm confident that will not be a recommendation on this year's letter.
That's great. I mean, for those people that are watching, I think it's important for people to understand that it's very difficult to budget when you don't have accurate figures. And that is, so it may be an audit related item, but can't really do the rest of what we do without those numbers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And as we always say, budget and audit are just two sides of the same coin. So you're exactly right, President Paul.
Okay. Great. Thank you for the presentation, Catherine. I think you have us laid out the kind of work plan that I think we really need to do, again, going into a challenging budget year for FY25 and beyond. I like that it really looks across a broad array of options, and that we're likely to be able to be in position to take action on a number of different fronts. I do think, just to share with the board and the public my thinking of these things, the nature of the municipal budget is that inflation creates, as maybe you've heard me say this before, but inflation creates real challenges for our municipal budget, in that we have most of our expenses are subject, not all of our expenses are subject to inflation. Our revenues, our biggest revenue source, property tax fee, does not go up with inflation. It only goes up when you have real development, when you have real growth of the grand list, through new investment, or through a change in the tax rate. We have not had a tax rate change now. I believe this will be I think FY20 was the last time we had a voter approved tax rate change. And so to go 4 years without a change, it's historically high inflation is a real driver in why we are facing the kind of hole that we talked about at the beginning. We last went to the voters in the March of 22 and narrowly failed to secure voter approval for a property tax rate increase at that time. And that we did not go this year. I think it is something certainly it's on my mind. We may, frankly, I mean, to be straight about it, I think we are, without major cuts in services, I think we are going to need a change on the property tax rate side. I think it would be appropriate to look to the public safety tax for that, given the dramatic cost increases that we've seen in public safety in recent years. My approach always has been on this, that the way we should go to voters and when we're asking for further sacrifices to show them that we've worked very hard to explore all other options before doing that. And so I think that is part of the puzzle, but it is very much my goal to have some other answers as well in a cohesive package that we're going to the council, we're coming to you with it, and going to then to the voters with for next year. So that's the backstory here. That's a further point here. I think if there's no further hands, I will close this. Yep. I'm gonna close this section, and we have 25 minutes left in this meeting, and we will now go. My agenda just closed on me, but here we are. The next item is item 6.1, which is a clerk treasurer HR item, which is a reclassification of two clerk treasurer positions and not filling of one position. So Catherine, would you like to kick this off?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mayor. This is a story of if at first you don't succeed, try again. You may recall that I've been before this body before in the past several months asking for permission to hire a budget manager and a director of financial operations after our previous employee left. I've not been successful in hiring either of those, and our budget situation has changed. I've merged the DFO and budget manager into one position because in the meantime, our banking and cash operations manager, Darlene Bako, has really stepped up and taken over a lot of the work related to bonding. So she is eligible for a reclassification. So as you can see in the packet, I'm requesting that we reclassify the new director of finance position according to a market factor done by Gallagher Flynn, and reclassify the banking and cash ops director. And both of those together still saves money and will help the clerk treasurer's office to hit its attrition goals. Any questions?
Okay, there are no questions. Is the board any other discussion or ready for motion?
Like to put the motion as indicated on civic clerk.
Thank you, Councillor Jang, second by Councillor McGee. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Catherine. Again, this now brings us to 6.2, which is an authorization to execute the design contract for the Queen City Park Road side path. Laura Wheelock is here to kick this off for us. So, Laura.
Yep, we also
Sure,
actually
sorry.
have Philip Peterson who's going to do the intro.
Okay, great. Sorry. Philip, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Much like Catherine, I'm down for the count here, but love to be in person, but we'll do this. I'll do the quick presentation here. So we're here to request your approval and recommendation to proceed with a design contract for the Queen City Park Road Side Path project. Just provide you with some key details and reasons for your support. Queen City Park Road Side Path project is a result of a collaborative effort involving the CCRPC, cities of Burlington and South Burlington, and Tool Design. The purpose is to create a vital bicycle and pedestrian connection from the Linwood Drive intersection on US Route 7 in South Burlington to the Burlington Waterfront Greenway. The current Queen City Park Road configuration it falls short of our city's vision for a safe, affordable, accessible transportation network. The shared use path we propose will significantly enhance safety and accessibility. And it aligns very well with our city's planned BTV, walk, bike, and other comprehensive plans throughout the city. So to procure a design consultant, we follow the V-Trans at the ready procurement process. Hoyle and Tanner emerged as the highest qualified firm through a thorough evaluation, considering their expertise in side path design, railroad crossings, and public outreach. So just to discuss the funding for Queen City Park Road Side Path project, City Council approved a budget of $1,035,000 for design and construction, with grant funding provided by V-Trans Municipal Assistance Section with in particular bicycle and pedestrian program grant money. The local match is sourced from capital funds, which have already been reviewed and approved through the city's capital committee. So we're requesting to amend the project budget to accommodate the full grant amount, with the understanding that the city will incur expenses upfront and will seek reimbursement for 80% of those expenses from V-Trans. Project timeline, we're looking to get underway for construction in spring of 2028. So in conclusion, Queen City Park Road Side Path project is a vital investment to our community's transportation infrastructure, and it aligns very well with our vision for a safe, accessible, and equitable transportation network. And I recommend you approve the request.
Thank you, Philip. Questions, discussion, motion? President Paul.
Thank you. I'll move the item, the motions recommended on civic clerk.
Thank you very much. Is there a second? Second by Councilor Barlow. Any discussion? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Philip.
Thank you.
6.3, allocation of bond proceeds for public improvements, Rock Point Bridge project. Who's going to take the lead on this one?
Ashley's gonna. Yeah, I will do it.
All right.
But just to connect this item with the next item on the agenda, they are very much related, and if there's questions about either, I think one discussion may be easier, because it's not an easy topic.
Is it possible to have the introduction for both items at the same time? I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I mean, if there is.
Yeah, I mean, I think I tried to cover the overall project in my memo. Obviously, the project team has a more descriptive overview of what the entire project will entail. So I think I'm happy to jump off and, dive into project specific type discussion immediately after. Whatever works.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you get started and let's just try to link it too.
Essentially, this request is taking a look at projects that have a balance of bond proceeds to be used towards another purpose. In this case, we are talking about the project that you're going to be discussing next in the next item here, the Rock Point Bridge. The gist of this one is that the DPW team came to the Capital Committee previously, understanding that they needed additional dollars to help build this project. At that time, we identified sources of funding to support the request. Since that time, the team had gotten another bid, which increased the cost of the project, which led us to go take another look to try to find additional sources of funding to help support the completion of this project. Without myself getting into the details of this project, which I sort of know, but not really, I'm not the expert on the project itself. Essentially, what the capital team has done is reviewed a series of projects with available sources of funding to allocate towards this project. You will see a list of all of the projects, their sources of funding, and there is no project that we have recommended in this case that still needs any of this funding. They are closed, or there are no additional expenses to incur, so they are all available. We have worked with our bond counsel and reviewed this request with them and gotten their support and recommendations via this memo and the attached resolution with this request.
Great.
So I
Okay.
think at this point, yeah, I'll turn over to
I think
Laura
that's
to give you the
sufficient, and
details.
now let's turn to the bridge project.
Yep, thank you. So it is helpful, I think, to understand what the request is going to fund with what Ashley just described, with the leftovers of unused project funds. So Cindy unfortunately had to step out. She has a commitment at another committee meeting right now, but DPW and Parks have been working collaboratively on the design for the replacement of the Rock Point Bridge. The bridge connects two parcels of the Rock Point diocese, but the city comes into this as we have a lease with V-Trans for the bike path. And within that lease for the bike path and its occupation is the maintenance and future replacement of the structure. So we have been working for a replacement option, which replaces the bridge off alignment. This allows the single lane bridge to still be active throughout the duration of construction, so that Rock Point, its users and our fire department have access across this spot until the next structure is constructed. The existing bridge was built at the time that the railroad was constructed and is past its service life. And so it's a strong priority to have that replaced.
Yeah, this has been a topic of discussion for years now. This is a longstanding commitment. The city's had this responsibility ever since the building of the bike path. Those were the terms under which the bike path could get constructed. And it has been a matter of kind of increasing concern from the Archdiocese in recent years that clearly the bridge is falling into disrepair and needs action. So appreciate the efforts of the team to cobble together a financing plan amidst challenging times to move this forward. I think it's something we have we really don't see any choice but to move forward with this. I think it is at some level, inaction could, we have a responsibility to keep people using the bridge safe as well as people underneath the bridge safe. And we've gotten to the point where we need to take action on this. Jared, would you be comfortable with moving the items together since they're related, or do you think there really should be separate?
I think they should be separate.
Okay.
Motions, yes.
Okay, so we are still then on 6.3, which is the allocation of the bonds proceeds. I would welcome motion to further discuss. Councilman McGee.
I'd be happy to make the motion as recommended.
Second.
Thank you both. Any discussion of 6.3? Seeing none, we will go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion carries unanimously. Thank you. This brings us to 6.4, Rock Point Bridge authorization to award construction contract and the proposed budget amendment. Councilor McGee.
I'm happy to make the motion on this item as well.
Thank you. Second by President Paul. Thank you. Discussion.
Just wanted to ask basically the timeline in expecting the reimbursement from V-Trans.
There is no grant on this project because it is not part of the public roadway network. So it is not eligible for any federal funding.
I initially thought that it's the same and there is 80% will be reimbursed.
Not on this item,
Okay.
project.
Thank you.
I think with that, are we ready for a vote? We'll go to vote on the motion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? The motion, please carries unanimously. Thank you, Laura. This brings us to item 6.5, 195, 201 Flynn Avenue, 2019 third MOU extension. I believe this is also related to the executive session as well. What is the expectation here? Are we going to do the executive session first before action or no?
Yeah, the plan was to do an informational update for the Board of Finance and then transition to the executive session and then come back out of the executive session and seek action at that point. That way we're able to update the public with some public information, then fully brief this body and then come back for action.
Right, great. We've got about 11 minutes to do all that if possible. So why don't you do the short informational update? Go for it.
Great, thank you very much. 22 years ago, CSWD purchased the 3-acre parcel at 195-201 Flynn Avenue, right across the railroad tracks from the City Market Co-op, in order to help the city of Burlington find an upgraded location for a drop-off center. Fast forward to 22 years, there'd been a lot of water under the bridge, and both parties had not come to a solution about how and when to build the facility, mainly around the fact that Champlain Parkway was not advancing for a long period of time. But now the parkway is under construction and CSWD is interested in a final resolution, as is the city of Burlington. So we share a lot in common. We share an interest in finding a modern drop-off center in the city of Burlington, and 2, improving the city's own soil management operations. And we've made some progress on negotiations, whether it'll be a purchase of these 3 acres by the city of Burlington or some lease arrangement, whether lease purchase or just a lease of the facility. And we would like an extra year. The staff, the managerial leadership, both at CSWD and the city, think it's prudent to get a year extension on our current memorandum of understanding. And CSWD leadership is prepared to sell it to their board at no cost, and that this would give us a year to work through the final details, which some of the negotiation details I can offer in executive session.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I think unless the board objects, I think now would be the time for motions to go into executive session. Can you help us with those, Jared?
Yes. So there is a recommended action right here on Civic Clerk. So you move to enter executive session pursuant to 1 VSA 313A2 to discuss the negotiation or securing of real estate purchase or lease options regarding the parcels located at 195-201 Flynn Avenue, currently owned by CSWD.
Make that motion.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow, seconded by Councilor McGee. Any discussion? All those in favor of that motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. And now we actually make a motion to go into it.
Move.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Move
Well,
to.
there was some